Hello, and welcome to the Alabama Public Health Training Network. I'm Bill Kennedy, State Social Work Director at the Alabama Department of Public Health. Thank you for joining us today for our program, Ethics in the Age of Social Media. If you have a question about anything being discussed today, please call or email during our broadcast. The phone number and email address are on your screen now and will appear again later in the program. Also, the handouts, sign-in sheets, and evaluations are all available online. You will need to register for this program in order to access those materials. Continuing education credits have been approved for nurses, social workers, and EMS personnel for this program. In order to receive credit for this training, you must watch the entire program, then complete and return the sign-in sheets and the evaluations. While content may continue to be relevant, CE credit will only be awarded for 1 year for nurses, expiring on May 30th, 2020, and 2 years for social workers and EMS, expiring May 30th, 2021. If you're watching this program on demand and want to receive a social work CE certificate, you'll need to complete the social work test and send it in, along with your sign-in sheet and evaluation. If you're watching this program live, there is no social work test required. For social workers, if you're watching this program live, it qualifies for classroom hours. If you're watching on demand, it's considered non-classroom hours. Before we get started, I'd like to introduce our presenter today. Jim Sako is a trainer and consultant based in Asheville, North Carolina. His social work career has included experience in inpatient and outpatient mental health and substance use disorder settings. Since the mid-1980s, Jim has merged his clinical practice, his experience with public health trainer focused on sexual health, case management, and substance use, and motivational interviewing. He has trained more than 50,000 healthcare workers since 1986. Welcome, Jim, and thank you for being here. I know you have a lot of great information to cover today.
Well, thank you, Bill. Good morning. Good morning, everybody here. I'm delighted to be here, delighted to be thinking about this topic. And as I was thinking about this morning, I realized there's two different audiences. Usually, when we talk about use of social media, there are my early adapters and late adapters. I was slow to come to technology. Raise your hand. I was slow to come to technology. Thank you very much. I love technology, and I'm excited for the next new development. Come on, the girl with the Apple Watch, I know you're excited now. She's up front. She was up front doing her Instagram when we started today. I remember that, like, as I was getting ready, I thought, I remember a time, this is really, people won't even remember this. I remember a time email started at work, and I thought, I wonder if I can finish my career before I have to learn email. True story. Like, I don't want to fool. I was cool with Word documents. I don't know why that made sense, but once they brought in an internet and said we're going to visit with each other and send each other hateful notes through the thing, I said, I don't know. I hope that'll pass. Maybe that'll be a fad, I said to myself. Charlene, it didn't use it. Maybe it'll be a fad. Maybe email will go away. Anyway, so, as I thought about it, I thought, like it or not, it's here to stay. It's the reality of our lives. I come to this with the bias that it's a tool for us in public health. That as I thought about it, getting ready for this, what I thought was it is a really valuable tool. You know, we've got somebody about to retire upstairs saying we just got to print one more pamphlet for these children, and they'll stop eating donuts or stop having sex or stop drinking or smoking or something. And I'm just thinking, if you talking about a 20-year-old kid and handing them a pamphlet, you might as well be speaking Greek. Because if it ain't on my phone or my watch, ain't no young person. Am I right, my friend? Who do you know going to read a pamphlet? I'm looking at my intern up here. And so sort of how we engage people, public health consumers, how we keep them interested, how we communicate with people about health has to include electronic and digital media, and how we do that within our comfort zone, how we do that in a way that addresses our code of ethics. One thing I'll say up front is I was delighted because I've done talks like this before, but in doing this, 2017, I think, late 2017, National NASW put forward ethical guidelines that relate to just the use of digital media. And so if you think, oh, this dude is smart, this bald guy is smart that Rhonda brought up here, what I've done is I've adapted a lot from the materials. Really, really thoughtful, well-considered ideas about our needs, about consumers' needs, very consumer-sensitive guidance on use of regulations guiding the ethics around social media. So again, kudos to our friends at at NASW, who, and as a member, I guess I stole from them, but I paid for it. So ultimately, as someone who pays my dues, they're partly mine, aren't they? So there's our first slide. We're going to talk about what it is. A couple of definitions there. These are not unfamiliar. I underlined a couple important concepts as we think about social media. User-generated content. You know, so much of what we think about is generated by whomever, certainly in public health, generated by the really smart people who are public health practitioners. In this case, we think about social media, a group of internet applications that allow creation and exchange of user-generated content. What comes to mind when I say user-generated content? Anybody? Like? Come on. What comes to mind? User-generated content like? Like Facebook, right? Again, thank you for letting us know you're over 50, Bill, but and proud of. Oh, it's close. 49 and a half. Yeah, that in fact, when we think about user-generated content, I plug in to my laptop in the morning. I see my cousin's grandchildren in Colorado. I say hi. In that acute outfit, she says, yeah. And we are, as users of that four, many other four, we're going to talk about in a minute. Electronic communication in which people create online communities. And I think the other interesting use, and as I thought about the value, particularly in public health, is the communities that are created around particular disease states. You know, one of the things that I hadn't thought a lot about, but if I know somebody who has a condition, I go see who else has that condition. And as I did some work on this, if we talk about serious and chronic disease states, there are online communities of support and information that exist in many different platforms. And so the idea that I'm sharing information, ideas, part of the bind, I'm just going to say it, is those are not regulated. Those don't necessarily have good medical advice. I would say there are some, perhaps, vaccine sites whose science I'm not completely certain about. That's pretty diplomatic, isn't it, Rhonda? But again, a community of people who, without, and good and bad, as I said, part of the ethical issues here is the value of people who have MS coming together and saying, man, it's a drag to have MS. And then somebody logs in and says, MS is caused by the government or microwaves or bad juju or something, whatever, because that's the world we live in. So major users, so there's some ideas. Raise your hand in the room. Facebook. Who's Facebook? Golly, almost everybody. No Facebook? She didn't have it. We'll be right there. Instagram? No Instagram. Instagram, I don't want a profile. Your Instagram. Good. All of them under 30. Kitty takes it out. Twitter? Gosh, I wish I had Twitter. Tweeters? You are the in the front row. Wish we had somebody in the public eye who was a big Twitter user. No one comes to mind, but it's a pretty popular forum. We'll talk more about these in detail. LinkedIn, which never made sense to me. I'm on it, but I don't know why. You get requests, you go, what the heck do you do with it? Whatever. Snapchat. Two big media users in the front row. Big age difference, Snapchat and Instagram, very similar, but very big. And then Tumblr, Pinterest. Again, I don't know what Pinterest is. I wish they'd leave me alone. I signed up once. I can't. They won't stop. Fluid, constantly changing is part. What's dead that used to be there? What's dead you used to use or heard about? MySpace, it did. DEAD, and I don't even know why. But it's so funny. I have a girlfriend that met her husband on MySpace, and they kind of go, yeah, we killed it or something. But MySpace is dead. Vine died, and I don't know why. I don't know what happened. It was a cute video sharing. I guess Snapchat, Instagram killed it, but it's one that died. Other social media. I say this not because I wanted any of those to die, but before we invest energy or make assumptions, I think understanding what's current, there really are some compelling things about demographics in use. Again, Instagram, Snapchat, both video, photo sharing, significant age difference. I think it's almost 75%, 2/3 to 75% of Snapchat 20 to 34. Snapchat is a younger person, young adult kind of thing. Instagram, different age demographic. And so again, as you're thinking about how do I use these in public health, what are the implications for us in public health, kind of, and I always go back to talking to your consumers, making sure you've got your finger on your consumer's pulse. You know, a lot of people who don't do that say, yeah, we so smart, we got a teen intervention for diabetes or smoking, we finna get a Facebook page going. I mean, honey, if you think any teenager, look at her, she's in the front, no teenager going to read no Facebook page, so please. But, you know, there's always somebody 60 saying, oh, I like to look at my grandkids, so surely I'm going to attract a bunch of 14-year-old kids with the Facebook. Not so much. In the room, let's talk about our use, our own personal use. I'm checking hourly. I'm checking daily. Who's hourly? That's all right. Thank you, my friend. I knew my intern was going to come out. Again, the reality for us is the use of media is universal for people. I'm going to guess 24, 23, 25. And regular and just part of life has always been a part of life, right? And so, again, those of us trying to figure out, one of the things that comes up for me is it disrespectful people have their phone out in a meeting? Bill going to do a quick selfie. You know, to me, there's a part of me that still struggles. But what I know is trainings, if you are raised with a connection to social digital media, it's not rude. And in fact, who's been in a restaurant and seen a couple young people on a date doing Snapchat with you or Instagram or something, and you go, but they're on a date, and it's a different relationship to media. Daily, come on, that's most of us, isn't it? Daily, I check something. I'm several times a day. I try to limit it, but I like to see what's going on. Some of it pings me. Who's less than daily? Anybody less than daily? Are you not into it at all, Shakira? What? Facebook for work, and that's it. And say more. At home, you don't want to fool with it. What? You're done with it. And Instagram, anything? YouTube. She's reading me on YouTube. Okay, good. Please. Who are you pointing?
Bill's pointing at me.
Oh, yeah. You are?
I'm Meredith Adams.
Hi, Meredith.
How are you?
Great.
No, I'm not on Facebook. No.
What's your decision? Tell me.
Because I don't have that kind of time.
Okay.
I'm on the computer all day at work, and when I get home, I want to spend time with my son.
Yeah. Good. And again, I can't decide for people. People say I don't have time. A lot of privacy confidentiality concerns. And part of what I'm going to talk about is we don't have the answer for privacy and confidentiality. Like how you're going to protect everything. I mean, I just think once you jump on your computer or your smartphone, you run some risk of somebody knowing something about you. You know, and for people that really get bogged down with, I don't want people to know nothing. Or, I mean, I think you can go too far and say people are tracing me through my phone, and you know, anyway, but issues of privacy, amount of time. I hear from multiple how much time I spend on the screen anyway, and it's a trade-off, because if you're not on a screen after work, if you don't use these for personal, what do you give up? What's the trade-off? Katie, what would people give up who said, I'm on that darn computer all day long, I'm not going to think about it after 5? What's the trade-off? Any thoughts? No worries? Anybody? What do you give up if you say, I'm not going to fool with that? What would you give up if I said I'm pulling the plug?
Knowing what's going on, I guess. Being able to.
How would you know what's going on?
Hey, being able to keep my eye on what my teenagers are doing.
Oh, there you go. Who's tracking their children on social media? 1, 2, 3. Sam on watching what they up to, make sure that they're not hanging out with that trashy girlfriend. Not your kid, but somebody's kid. Right, why are you going to call nobody trashy on the video conference? Use for kids or people you know under 25. How often? How regular? I think most hourly, isn't it? I mean, yeah, at least hourly. And again, so as we're thinking about, how to relate to people, how people experience the world, how people make relationships, how people get information. Like I said, I keep coming back to that pamphlet, and that person upstairs said, I'm going to get a really good pamphlet. 3 could spend a bunch of money and ship out boxes of pamphlets to people in the health department. My retiree is laughing. That's why you left, didn't it? You said, I'm not. If they're going to retire the pamphlet, I'm going to quit along with them. But it's dead. I mean, really, and again, just figuring out who your users, who your potential customers are, what their habits are, building on those, and supervisors. I guess the other compelling thing I've heard is as people talk about how we're going to manage the workforce, understanding these realities is part of workforce management. That I just did a thing on cross-generational work relationships. Gen X meet millennials meets old fuddy-duddies, and the reality is the public health workforce is aging, and we got a big wave of retirement about to hit. And if we're talking about a wave of people who's going to come in and take those jobs and who's going to replace your mid-level managers, their relationship to media, their ideas about where information comes from, are going to change rapidly. And I was at a meeting in D.C. years ago, and this public health HR person came up and she said, "You're going to have to change the way you do business." That, in other words, it's not these young people who are going to change their relationship to media and devices. We're going to have to, as public health, we're going to have to modify what we do because of the changing public health workforce. And so again, when I see a phone at a meeting, I say, of course, this person's 25, and of course they and would say, and I think believe and probably true, can respond to media, check their Instagram, and be tracking what's going on in my meeting. As a trainer, I used to say, put your phones away. I don't think you can do that anymore. I think you come off like a crabby school mom. I have a colleague who just insists that phones come off, and if she sees one, she gets down and wag the thing. I mean, these are grown adults. And to me, the reality of our work life, the reality of our life is accommodating people's relationship to media is part of life in the digital age. So there are your numbers up there. Facebook, a billion users worldwide. Facebook. So without question, Facebook in the lead in social media. Again, what's important, definitely an age difference there. People under 25, certainly teenagers, no interest. Once my mom, sorry, honey. Once my mom got on Facebook, I was out. You know, so it's like I jumped to another media once my mom could track where I was going and whatever else. But certainly by far the widest. Snapchat and Instagram 1 and 2, both of those video and photo sharing. What I said earlier is a significant age difference. Snapchat much younger, and so adolescents, young adults, way more likely to be Snapchat users. Again, I don't understand. I don't have a marketing mind to understand. Did somebody market a certain way? But however, the young, I guess it's the pack mentality of young people who said, "Oh no, we're done with that. We're done with Vine. We move into Snapchat," and people just went along. Or more likely, some savvy media people placed the right digital media and made the idea of moving to Snapchat more interesting. LinkedIn, right underneath that. Twitter, right there. And Pinterest, 57 million monthly users. These are users per month. All U.S. data except the Snapchat data. I couldn't find just U.S. data, so that's North America. What I would say is if I come back in a year or two, you're going to see Snapchat moving up. Put a bullet beside Snapchat. As I looked at media usage trends, it's clearly the fastest growing of the current pack, and in terms of where people are trying to develop intervention, where people are trying to engage users. Something I read, again, like you could reach more than half of kids 18 to 20, 18 to 30 in the U.S. If you were on a Snapchat ad, it's going to reach half of everybody 18 to 30 in the country if you do a Snapchat ad. And so that's a whole lot of young people that are being reached. In North America, that is, again, mostly U.S. and Canada, about 70% of the population, U.S., Canada, has social media access, uses social media. So that's 3/4 of people in North America are on their Snapchat, on their Facebook, doing their selfie, on LinkedIn, tweeting something. In terms of understanding how this plays out at work, the research I've looked into says healthcare workers are using social media in about the same proportion as the general population. And so you think, well, I use it more or less. Again, I'd argue that there's certainly some age difference that played out in this room that probably plays out everywhere. But again, we as healthcare workers are using data about the same. Use of internet for physicians is almost universal. Who's been to a medical appointment where they used the internet while you were there in your appointment? Yeah, my dude is internal medicine, so he's covering everything, and he is in real time checking out conditions, checking update on medical. He's on web while he's doing care. And I mean, I just think as everybody's connected to their electronic medical record, I think what we're going to see, rather than let me step out and look up a book, is I'm on the internet, let me check dosage, let me check symptoms, let me, and so again, almost universal. Alabama Department of Public Health looked at the excellent work that's being done by the social digital media Facebook page, Instagram, Pinterest, Twitter, and YouTube. ADPH is doing all of those social media sites. So under the umbrella of Alabama Department of Public Health, we've got a presence in all those places. And so somebody here is saying we better think about having a presence, being out there, letting our consumers know. Are people familiar with those platforms here in the health department? News to you? I was a bit surprised to think about Pinterest and Instagram because they require pretty regular tending, so there must be somebody who's tending pretty regularly to the social media accounts here.
This presentation will be on YouTube.
Really? Yep. Okay. And I'm always looking for new work, so find me on LinkedIn. No. So let's all step back and kind of think about good things and not so good things. As I think about the public health, Twitter, Instagram, and I think that's probably universal. Health departments around the country, people have, they're tweeting, they're certainly Facebook. Most people are on Instagram or thinking about it. So it is the reality of how public health is practiced. I guess question to people in the audience here, good things and concerns about this integration of social media into public health. If you think about the left side of that screen, what are the good things about an interaction between public health and social digital media, and what risks, concerns, what thoughts do you have concerning? I want to start at the back of the room. Good things about social media being part of how we practice public health. Any thoughts?
To get the word out.
Get the word out. Hey, we're doing a health fair. We're doing something. Please.
I said access.
Access. You bet. So we have access to consumers. They have access to us, and so there is an exchange. Other good things about the interaction between social.
You can target certain age groups.
You bet. We can target certain age groups. We can say we've got something where we want to reach young people, so we're going to get a Snapchat contest going, something with, absolutely. So as we refine our social media strategy, we can micro-target intervention information. What else is good about it?
Real time.
Real time, absolutely, as opposed to, well, come to that health fair in 2 weeks, whatever else. I'm thinking of outbreaks. The website came up. Yes, the ADPH has a hepatitis A concern that came up. And so I'm not waiting for somebody to mail me something or something to show up on television or whatever else. Whoever's managed the website, hey, we got a little blip of hepatitis A. And so there in real time was some information about a current health problem that should concern a lot of us. Other good things about benefits of social media being integrated into public health.
You can take it anywhere.
Yeah, you bet. So it's not just you have to come to the health department. I mean, again, use of smartphone is almost universal, and so we think most people are going to have access to us, and so wherever they are, wherever consumers are, think about the distance between public health settings and where people live and play and work and eat donuts, and the fact that while I'm having a Krispy Kreme, I can read about the dangers of Krispy Kreme. That sounds good for lunch, don't it? Now that I'm thinking about it. I guess the other thing that I want to add is it's about engagement. That as I think about it, if we're using social media right, it's not Big Brother just sending information out. It is a collaboration around information and exchange. I'm thinking of some people I know who've done social media contests and had kids produce video and post their videos about health issues, and then they made it a little contest. And so it certainly is about outreach and flexibility and getting information out. But there's something about, again, user-generated content, this idea that there's a collaboration between public health and our end users that I think presents an interesting opportunity and changes public health from I'm the middle-aged nurse giving you a pamphlet here in a clinic that you've driven to hey, you're asking me questions, or you're sending information, or engaging in a conversation about health with end users. Downside of doing this, risks, concerns, thoughts about maybe the not so good things about integrating social media in public health. Concerns come to mind, please.
Interpreting the information.
As I said, these are user-generated with no filter. And if we talk about online communities, you know, I'm just going to go out on a limb. There is no hard science that talks about vaccine causing autism. And yet you can Google and do your phone, and there's all kinds of people. I'm telling you, my read on science says that's not true. That's one that sticks in my throat a little bit just because of the downside of people not vaccinating their children and the danger to public health good that causes by misinformation. So it's not regulated. I'm going to jump on my Instagram, my Snapchat. Hey, I don't believe, you know, maybe saturated fat is good for you. They're not telling us. Maybe donuts are good for you. I'm praying. What else? Concerns, not so good things.
Sometimes it give people the okay to say stuff
Okay.
that normally they wouldn't say. It's like a
You bet.
Yeah.
Unregulated, I'm going to put a microphone in your face and you think you're
I'm
anonymous.
trying to think of a good word for it. It's
Crazy.
like- yeah.
Anonymous and crazy. I'm sure there's a nuance to that. But you can say whatever crazy thing you're thinking. Again, with or without science, with or without concern to other people. I'm thinking it's a little beyond what we're
It
doing.
would be hard to say some of the things that I read face to face to another person.
You bet, you bet. Would you say that to me? It's easy when someone's in Ohio and I'm anonymous. I'm saying you're a dope and whatever else. Versus if I was in a real life encounter, would I say that ugly thing or take that stand? Other concerns, risks. Confidentiality, golly, absolutely. These are, there are some pretty clear and obvious ways that HIPAA guides us, but I'm also thinking about the murkiness of interacting over Instagram, YouTube with patients that we serve in a public way. People asking me questions, people giving their cell phone out to people and texting patients and text-based information. I'm sending text-based, there's all kinds of technology about text-based SMS messages to remind people to take their birth control or do this thing. Well, is that regulated? And now I'm getting text messages. I mean, I'll never forget I had taken a break from clinical practice and I came back and you know, just because of the world we live in, I'm going to allow patients to send email scheduling or text email scheduling so they have my cell phone. I'm going to be late, whatever else. And it got into this murky, what are you doing on Saturday? I don't want to know what you're doing on Saturday. I want this is. And so this whole idea that I cracked open a door because it was efficient, and it became something that I had to come in and address later, because I don't want people updating me via text. How many people have their work text and interacting with consumers, and what are the boundaries about that? What issues about where's that phone? I mean, it really, confidentiality and dual boundaries. You know, the other murky thing about this is who's had people show up on your Facebook or your LinkedIn or something, go, oh my God, how did they find me? How did the web figure out that person, friend of a friend? I've had all kinds of really weird boundary things show up. And again, I can't figure out how other than somebody knew somebody. But things where I know don't want that person. I mean, who wants to see Rhonda's end of the Saturday night pictures? I don't want to know what Rhonda. I mean, she's home having ironed her dress for church, and or whatever she did on Saturday. I don't want to know what she did Saturday night. So some thoughts I had in preparing this, thinking about this, issues of privacy, obviously, our confidentiality. One of the things you're going to see in a minute is just a reminder that part of the burden we bring to our use of social media, especially if we're talking in any way about work, is thinking about, is there any potential for breach of confidentiality, boundary stuff that we need to be aware of? Professional boundaries, sort of, do you want, I'm picking on Rhonda just because she's my friend, but do any of us want everybody in the community to see us after work and what we get into after work? You had a pool party. Let me take it to the extreme. You had a pool party and whatever else. Do you really need people to see you in your swimming suit that you might work with? Well, that's a horrifying thought for me personally. So what about my particular clients, and what about my community reputation? I mean, I think part of the bind here is we represent public health, big public health. And so you think, oh, what the heck? I got drunk and put on a sombrero and did whatever. If I'm your boss, I'm going to come behind and say, you know what? I know it was after work. I hope you weren't at your desk having drinks and putting on a sombrero. Most of us do that after work. But as a public health person who also has a work presence, can we, what are the implications of that? So sort of separating, and one of the reasons people say I cut off is they want to keep their personal identity at home and at work different. That one of the things I hear from people that say, I don't fire up my smartphone for that mess, I don't fire up my computer for that mess, is people want clear boundaries. And again, I can't decide for you. I know that I love seeing my cousin Nancy's grandchildren grow up who I've never seen. And so the trade-off for me when I think about what I love about the Facebook is I'm watching people's children grow up that don't live near me and seeing them do whatever. And so there's that, and this murky thing of a friend request from somebody. I go, good heavens, how did they find me? And no, I don't want you to be my friend. Do the cat and the fuzzy mouse. No, you not being my friend. So the plus side, certainly dissemination of health information. As I think about the most important use of digital, there's a way to reach different people, way to reach people in a meaningful way, in a way that's there, accessible on their smartphone wherever they live, that we wouldn't have if we didn't have it. And so being smart about doing that. Recruitment, again, I think one of the important ways we use social media is smart. We're recruiting people into intervention. Hey, come participate in this health fair. Come to my diabetes screening event. Come to my something. And again, as opposed to the flyer taped to the wall at the Piggly Wiggly. Ron, remember you used to do them flyers and tape up every Piggly Wiggly in town? Please stop driving around with your flyers at the Piggly Wiggly, because that is dead. Unless you're trying to reach people 70 and over for an intervention, nobody reading nothing at no Piggly Wiggly. I'm telling you right now, that's dead. But you're saying, hey, come to my health fair. Come get your breast examined. Come get your mammography, right? I'm going to read it on my phone. I'm going to see it on my smart media. I'm Instagramming with Kitty Tyler. Yeah, girl, sign me up for that mammogram. Something. Testicular cancer prevention. I'm going to point to you, brother. Again, this last reminder that the balancing act, integrity, accountability, trustworthiness, that one of the uses of media is we continue to reinforce you can trust us, things are transparent, and we use those media wisely. So just as I sort of was thinking about this integration of social media into public health, and again, you touched on a lot of this, but this last one, just being mindful about how in this age we maintain integrity, accountability, and the trustworthiness of our institutions of the healthcare system, I think is the balancing act. As we're having fun and participating in Instagram and sharing pictures of your kids. This dude does a website and a blog, mostly aimed at physicians, but I think does a nice job. I pulled this quote out just thinking about how we decide what to post and what to use, treating the web as if we are face-to-face. That his guidance was assume that you're saying things, doing things, and as it relates to HIPAA and privacy, would I say that in public? So in other words, if you're posting something, what I'm thinking about, nobody's going to do any egregious, I don't think anybody's going to do an egregious client confidentiality thing. But I think about what we do after work or in the staff lounge. Girl, that person came in and that waitress at Denny's has chlamydia, or whatever kind of thing we might do in a way, and we think about if we in some way intimated something about someone's health, or, oh, I had this crazy patient, or whatever, just being mindful that once you do that in a social media frame, you really lose control over who's going to know about that, where it goes. And so what he said, before you hit the send button, if I were in a crowded hospital elevator, would I say aloud what I just put on my Facebook, on my Instagram, on my Twitter? The answer is no, don't do it. Don't do it. My criteria, I ask myself, these are, what if my boss heard me? What if other consumers heard me? So before I post something, put out a cute Instagram, oh, these patients are driving me crazy. Again, I haven't named a particular patient, I haven't done a HIPAA violation. But what if my boss, what if other patients, what if my mom heard me? Mother's Day's coming up, get your mom a card. Get her some flowers if you still got her. And what would she say? And this other one, real important, what the lawyers say. You know, I believe it's, at least in the Alabama Department of Public Health, it seems like it's almost 1-to-1, one lawyer for every employee here. Isn't that about right, Bill? Seems like it. There are many, many successful lawyers in Montgomery, Alabama who seem to do nothing other than track every email you send and something and something. So again, it is part of the reality of where you practice. I mean, to be fair to senior leadership in the health department, we live in a litigious society, so of course I want information screened by legal, whatever else. And like most health departments, there's a very active legal presence that says, can we or can't we say that? Do we? Don't we want to say that? And again, as you're thinking about, do I decide to post this wacky thing or share this on YouTube or whatever else, imagining those audiences and saying to yourself, should I or shouldn't I? Please.
So one of the things we kind of struggle with is trying to say something sort of in a plain language that everybody can understand.
You bet.
Versus saying something using medical terms.
You bet.
And having that understanding come through when you don't have somebody that's coming in your facility, you know, you're putting this on social media or through some, you know, other means of getting that information out there.
Yeah.
So
what I use as my guide, Bill, is sixth grade language. That and certain programs will tell you what they'll analyze and tell you if your message. I just think in terms of information for consumers, best practice, as I understand it, is to aim for about a 6th grade reading level for the general public. And so being able to say, that if anybody questions, you say that's what best practice is in terms of health communication. I think the other part of that is if people, the downside of reaching over people's head is you lose people who aren't going to understand what the heck it is you're talking about. The backup, Bill, and what I always suggest is we did message testing with consumers. So if you get in a tug of war with legal or with your whatever else, I'm working on a project now where we're developing health communication messages. We've drafted those, and we've got end users that we're trying to reach who are giving us feedback on those. So I think to say it's best practice to be at this language level, we had consumers engaged in reviewing our drafts, and this is what they told us is going to reach people like them. And I would take that argument to legal and say, you know, as long as it's not offensive, whatever else, that I just think it's the basics of marketing. You know, some of this is basics of marketing. If I'm trying to sell peas, I want to figure out what the consumers of frozen peas want, ask them their preferences, ask other pea users how to reach people like them, and I'm going to go to bat and say, here's what my potential frozen pea buyers have told me is going to reach people like them.
And I think you hit on two things there.
Please.
Who is your consumer? Who are you trying to get the message to? Is it another health professional?
You bet.
Or is it the public?
You bet. And being very deliberate. I mean, that's the thing. When people aren't mindful about their social media hours, are we trying to recruit or convey information? Who is our target? What exactly is the intent? I mean, I think really thinking through strategically how we use social media. And again, the people that do that work here in ADPH, I'm assuming think those things all the time, because the person you're going to reach on your YouTube channel is very different than the person who's reading your tweets today or going to be on your Instagram. And so thinking about who's my audience, I think, has to start it. What's our intention? So who's our audience? What's our intention with this social media communication? What's the best way? And again, I just think making sure you've done some message testing with consumers. I think we make so many mistakes in public health by not engaging learners on the front end. I was joking, did a training yesterday about developing an intervention. We sat up here in the ivory tower. We decided it was going to be a great intervention. We ordered pizza. We had gift cards. We had childcare. No patient showed up. And I say, I know I'm supposed to feel bad, but did you ask your consumers, is anybody going to go to that thing? Do they want the stupid pizza? Or what would be a good gift card? And so in the same way, if we're talking about any intervention, planning it through wisely and having meaningful engagement of your consumers means you don't waste time, money, and resources. Social media is in that sense exactly the same as other health education, other things we do, just a different platform. Questions? These next several slides, I don't want to spend a lot of time, but these are the meat of the NASW ethics and social media. Again, I was really, really pleased to see these. I think there's some excellent reminders for us. First one talks about developing policy and procedure. I think that's standard, including what happens if we breach confidentiality. I just think as you think through what's our policy around digital social media, how we use media, sort of making sure you have very specified, here's how we do and don't use, and here's what we'll do if there's a breach, because that's the biggest worry for anybody, and thinking that through in advance. A second bullet I love, it means discussing media in advance with consumers so that I know up front what you do, how you use technology, what you do and don't do, who you share information with. I guess I'm thinking of the client who is in public health but involved with other social services, either mental health or substance use. Maybe there's some DSS, child protective involvement, and CPS is saying, did she show up for alcoholism? And we're saying she was late for WIC, and everybody talking to one another. The idea that you state really clearly to me how information is used, who shares it, I just think in this day and age makes good sense. And I love the idea of talking about proactively explaining to consumers, probably in policy, you know, sort of as part of your consent, but I think really thinking through who we share information with and how it is. There's something about the respect to consumers. There's something about engaging them in that conversation early. So clients have a clear understanding of how we use technology, including to service delivery. I was talking to the folks here about the telehealth program, booming telehealth program. You ain't going to get no neurologist to drive to every county health department. We're going to fire up a computer at the county health department and say, hey, bring your patient with the neurology, whatever else. And so kind of thinking about how we do that, how information is stored. You know, I think about the use of TV with psychiatry, another big use. And you got people who are hearing voices and think TVs are talking to them, and you bring them to a TV and say, hey, the TV's going to talk to you. Okay, I'm going to just name it. I go, well, is that the best use? But again, you got a lot of parts of Alabama where you got people 3 hours from the psychiatrist. And so the use of telehealth, but explain to me how it works, how to use it, and making sure client consents there. This last reminder, I think, is just good practice, being sure you've assessed their capacity to provide informed consent. Again, these are all from the NASW Code of Ethics. I don't want to take a long time, but they were so rich, and as we talk about the ethical issues, I just thought there was something. Making sure you're clear about who's there remotely. Now I'm talking about Skype and other phone, internet-based communication with people. Is that really your client? And where are they? And is there privacy there? I know a bunch of mental health people who are playing with the idea, can I Skype with my clients? Can I do Skype? I think the hardcore people are saying, be super, super careful, because I've fired up my laptop or my phone and we're visiting, but you're in a Starbucks or at the McDonald's or you're at home and other people, to me, you've got a big HIPAA problem once I start talking about stuff. Again, do I want to drive an hour and a half to your office or whatever else? Not really, but just being mindful. Again, where are my clients And again, are you sure confidentiality is assured where that person is receiving information communication, and what relevant laws are, again, making sure that you are HIPAA compliant with that communication. Not assuming, this next bullet says, don't assume people know how to have access, know how to access. I said smartphones are almost universal. I think there's a class bias in that. Some folks are still doing minute by minute and other kinds of phones, and it may not be there. So saying, hey, all wise women, we got a new phone app we're going to give to you. If you're not going to give me a phone, that may not be. You want to make sure they have access to that technology. If they don't, figure out what alternative is going to be there. I think to not assume, and again, to not assume everybody's an early adapter. Again, I think of wise women reaching people, what's the age range to 64? 40 to 64, going to be very different than some of the other work. We just talk about a 65-year-old. She ain't got no Apple Watch, baby. Mama does not have no Apple Watch. She's still wearing a watch because she's over 40, you know. But no, she not having no Apple Watch, and probably not on no phone apps, and maybe has somebody fire up her Facebook so she can see her grandbabies, but that's about it. She wants to see them grandchildren. Again, a reminder about the special challenges with social and remote communication. A few things here. Again, responding to cultural diversity issues that may affect delivery. Again, not assuming that class and race. I think about age differences. We talk about culture, age differences, and people's relationship to social media. Making sure as we are delivering services, using media help us, we've thought through all the issues of diversity so that we are culturally competent in our use of intervention, which involves social digital media. Avoiding any non-work-related technology. Again, I work with a bunch of people that use, I'm thinking of outreach workers and other peer health people that are visiting with people on their phones. And I just think, man, it's a murky road. And I think especially of people, again, doing outreach, patient navigators, peer health educators that we use in healthcare. People ask me about training needs. I say really start with privacy, confidentiality, boundaries with people like that, because we can't assume, and I want to say there's an important and rich role that people who are peers and navigators do. I mean, navigators come from the breast cancer world, and here's this breast cancer survivor going to help me through this thing. I mean, there's something rich and invaluable about that, but I've not been trained as a social worker or nurse, the idea of ethics and boundaries, and if we don't really clearly train those folks and say, hey, here's who's going to have your number and turn it off at 4 o'clock, and here's the right use of digital social media and your phone with patients, I worry, and I know a number of people that are taking calls and texts all night and whatever else. I think, I don't want nobody taking no calls after 5 o'clock. I just think there's something about that boundary that helps us. There's something about that boundary that helps people who are, again, peers, other folks. Reasonable steps to prevent access to our social networking sites. I say reasonable access. We can do what we can. We can just say, I'm not having, we can do a pull a Shakira and say, I'm not having it, or I'm not going to even be on it. But if you're on it, reasonable steps. I just think, especially in smaller towns, people know one another. I mean, who's seen a face on your Facebook and go, good Lord, how did they know her? Anybody? But it's all the time. You go, oh my gosh. And in smaller towns, you won't see patients. I don't know who's worked in a small town health department. Anybody you know? People see each other at the Walmart and say, hey, you were my chlamydia nurse. You were so nice up in there. You go, oh my God. It is Sunday. It is Sunday. I'm here at Piggly Wiggly. I don't want to be talking about your chlamydia. Am I lying? Put me out. I know small town life is good. People bring each other jam and tomatoes, but they also just see each other. Hey, Bill, that was so great. I was back on meth, but I'm good now. You're going, I am just trying to get some eggs and butter and get home.
Hang my posters up.
Hang them posters up. Limiting your personal information. Just being mindful about what you use. The reminders there. Boundary communication, inappropriate and dual relationships with clients, potential to harm clients. I guess when I talked earlier about the dangers or the cautions, I just think murky boundaries have the potential to harm clients, and just being mindful. Yes, ma'am. Please.
You were talking about the telemedicine
Yes.
piece.
Yes.
Do we know what the standards are or ethics related to, like, if a client was in another state, and we're doing maybe an assessment or something with telemedicine?
I don't. I would assume that out of state is really problematic. I'm hearing ADPH lawyers running down the stairs saying, "Don't do nothing out of state." I think state law is so specific that we're talking about within this state. Bill,
I could actually
please,
speak a little bit
please.
to that in
Yeah.
that there are no laws in Alabama. And that the
better yet, there are no laws. There we
Alabama
go.
Board of Social Work Examiners is working on some legislation right now that's in the House because they're trying to catch the telemedicine laws up with social work. So
There's your answer. We got no laws.
other states do, though. Yeah. Other states do, and so
I think the typical model is we're going to bring somebody to a county health department, and they'll be in a conference room with video, and we're going to have two-way video. You know, how private is that setting? I mean, I'm assuming when we do develop policy, you've got to talk about the privacy of that setting. Somebody way smarter than me is going to have to talk about the privacy of that technology. I'm assuming that's been worked out, that there is so much telehealth happening everywhere that the ability to make that be secure. Michael Smith in this building is the telehealth director upstairs, and so I'm sure he is at work trying to help us figure that out. But that's interesting. Thank you, Bill.
we do have policies.
Yeah, but no legal standing right now.
They're working on it.
Working on it. Got it. Again, this last reminder that clients may become aware and may, in using social media, their personal connections, our personal connections. Avoid accepting requests from clients, whatever else. This is my suggestion, not NASW. Not NASW. I don't think you can have. I have a big caution what I do. I did avoid, all caps in red, social media connection to people that you supervise. I'm going to go out on a limb. I thought about it, and I just thought, you know, if there is a direct line of supervision, I just think it's really too murky. And the problem is sometimes we work side by side. You know, Kitty used to be a worker bee back in the day, and then she clawed her way to leadership. I'll be frank about it. Anyway, and so what do we do? People are still friends, whatever else. I just think if you've got some sort of direct report, I've got real concerns about seeing your Instagram, seeing your Pinterest, and seeing what you were up to Saturday night at work. Again, that's not Alabama public health law. That's about clear lines of supervision. And what happens, I think, once you step into a role, and it's hard because the good thing about public health is people do work their way up and used to be coworkers with people. It's always hard. I just think at some point, once you are in a line of report to me, that I'm going to have to step back and say there can be friendliness, but I think friendship has to stop if I'm your direct report, and I think you got to think about social media. Bill, what do you think? Is that too harsh? If I'm supervising people, can I be on their social media?
No, I think it's a good idea. I think
I want people to like each other. I want people to be friendly. But if I'm your direct report, and I'm seeing your Pinterest and your crazy Facebook stuff, worse yet, you seeing my crazy Facebook stuff. Who wants to see me in my sombrero into the night Saturday night? Anyway, clients, informing clients, the last couple slides about the NASW work. Unauthorized access, what we're going to do about it. Take reasonable steps to protect confidentiality of your information. There's lots and lots of people here trying to do that with your digital media. In fact, they broke the internet today. I understand they're so good, so strong, such strong firewalls here, and such good security concerns. They actually broke the media, broke the internet here. So I feel safe. Last couple NASWs comply with laws. Obviously, that makes sense. And avoid posting any identifying or confidential information about clients. I mean, those are I think pretty basic standards of practice. And I've really summarized these and winnowed them down. There's more that's there. And again, the citation, there's standard code of ethics standards for the digital age. Just super well thought out. Again, what I like is they help guide us in some ways that had been murky for me up until this happened. And again, questions that most of us have been kind of figuring out on our own. Like I said, the cat and the fuzzy mouse. No, I don't want to be on Instagram with you, for heaven's sake. Questions about anything I've done so far? You want to add? Bill, are people emailing questions, or we'll get questions later? How does that happen?
Well, nobody's emailed yet.
Okay. Again, if you're watching on video conference, I'm delighted to answer your questions. If you got them, email or call. We'll get those at the end. So privacy setting issues. Almost all of digital and social media allow you some controls. I say if you know how. If you don't, ask your 15-year-old kid or your 15-year-old nephew how to do it for you. Most of us are reliant on our IT department at home with people younger than us. Again, almost all social media allows you to frame who can see and who can't. I would argue that a lot of it is not foolproof, and there just are some quirky things about it. What I've got are some visual examples of what I think is some really nice digital media presence. Obviously, lots and lots of nice Facebook stuff. This is an alumni page, Florida State. I know everybody hates a certain school or other. YouTube, this is use of health information. I have had a hip replacement a couple years ago. My dude said you can go onto YouTube and you can see a real live hip replacement happening. Exactly. I said, no, I do not want to see nobody sawing any hip off before you saw mine off. But for folks who are users, consumers of information, you can find a whole lot. And again, how to do physical exam. Seriously, there is on YouTube. My doctor he gave me the link. I was like, no, I don't want to know. He was like, you can go online and they will show you the surgery online. No. Tweeting, like I said, I wish there were somebody famous that was a big tweeter I could use as a reference. But if there were, in the United States 2019, I'd say 280 characters? 280? Went up to 280. It was 140. So you get twice as many ways to share your opinion. And again, definitely something that I thought was more, when Twitter first came, I thought it was more interpersonal and celebrities and chatting. There's a whole lot of health information, professional use of tweeting. I talked about this communication campaign I'm working on for another project. The young person who's overseeing said, we're going to do a tweet storm once we get these communication products developed. I said, great. Don't know what no tweet storm is, but I know we're going to do it. And since she's under 30, I know she knows how to do it. But we will be pushing out these public health communication tools via tweet. That again, that's part of what it is. Up to 280 characters, as I said, used to be 240. And I had a colleague who was at a professional meeting. The other thing that news to me, but people are tweeting out all day long at professional meetings. So if you are a Twitter user, you're finding links to various talks at things, and so there's a whole way in which, again, what I thought was people watching the Kardashians and sharing stuff about the Kardashians really has become something that relates to our professional lives, and people share with one another. Always a hashtag Wise Woman Alabama, good people there. The @ sign is always the username. Retweeting means we're connected. You send me your tweet. The idea is you have the option to say, I'm going to share that within my network. And how people get to hundreds of thousands of users is it's tweeted, and then within other people's networks they retweet. And then tweet chats. Again, I don't know if tweet storm and tweet chat is the same thing. Is that tweet chat and tweet storm the same thing? We're not sure. Anybody help me with a tweet storm? Tweet chat. Tweet chat is we are on Twitter and we are chatting. Tweet storm versus tweet chat. Is that familiar? You're not a Twitter. Why not?
I just don't. I don't know. I don't want to keep retweeting 24/7. I think.
Okay, so that's your way of setting some limit. Okay, so she's on every hour. She said that's enough. I'm on every hour. That's plenty. Live tweet surgery. Don't you want to see somebody else's gallbladder surgery? on your phone. No, I do not want to see nobody's. Oh, website there. If you do say, I am someone who wants, this is particularly for physicians, but if you are someone who wants to know more about use of getting started on Twitter, there you have it. The answer is yes to us. Social media, what did I say, 4 or 5 platforms. I think, again, those of you who are familiar with other states, most have Facebook, most have Instagram. Anybody else familiar with other state health departments' platforms? Again, I think everybody's got a Facebook. I think most are going to have some Instagram presence. Many are tweeting now, again, because Twitter has become so popular and so current and fairly, as long as you've got somebody managing your social media accounts, fairly easy to get word out. So another use of healthcare institutions, Mayo Clinic pushing out information, associations, professional associations, hashtag NASW, for those of us who are here getting our ethics hours with NASW. Online journals, again, you think about, don't they mail you your journal and don't you go through paper journals? Again, paper is almost dead, I'm sad to report. But the idea that people are accessing. Anybody getting online journals? Anybody get your journals digitally versus still in print? Again, I just think if we look at newspaper and the struggle of the paper newspaper, how many people fire up newspaper on their phone, on their laptop, I just think that we can expect to see more of that. Presence of government websites, obviously CDC, U.S. government, an enormous social media presence. I think some of it excellent. I think CDC was late to come to the party, but the tools available at CDC are as strong as anything you can find. That in terms of what happened probably 10 or 12 years ago, then Director Gerberding said we're sort of putting out information for other scientists and other researchers. We need to be concerned about the end users. And they really became very different in terms of being consumer focused and having accessible health information for healthcare providers, but really where people can go to the CDC website who are lay people, who are public health end users, and say, I want to know more about that disease state. Again, LinkedIn, it's there. I think my experience is LinkedIn tends to be something that people in the business world are more reliant on than public health people. And probably something of an age difference, but making sure you're posting jobs on LinkedIn. I mean, again, if you think about how we use social media, are you putting ads in paper newspapers, or are you on LinkedIn? Are you tweeting about your job things? Sharing or not, ways that you can almost anywhere. If you on digital media, there's a place to click to your Facebook, place to click to your LinkedIn. And so again, as you're thinking through sort of your decisions about what information to share or not share, kind of asking yourself the question, do I share this? Do I forward this? Again, it's easy to say, well, I'm just retweeting. It's 8 o'clock at night. I'm at home. But if you think through, I'm an employee of Alabama Department of Public Health. I'm retweeting something from wherever. Same questions. Would I do this in a crowded hospital elevator? What if my boss heard me? What if the lawyers heard me? What if my mama heard me? To decide, do I or don't I want to do that? More guidance here. Bill, these slides are available to people afterwards, or we post these somewhere? Okay, so these are accessible. I'm sorry, all these links will be there. Patient use of social media. Social media is the new word of mouth, is what I have to say. And since we think about our relationship to media, part of what I thought about is health grades and how this two-way communication, the blessing of two-way communication, also means I'm going to go back after my appointment at that clinic and say, well, they were disrespectful up there. Don't, whatever you do, don't get your breast exam from blank county health department or whatever. So the idea that, and raise your hand, if I need something, I Google it. If I need medical, I Google it, right? And so we are, as consumers, engaged with media in a different way, looking, website. My thing is I'm not going to go to somebody that they don't have no website. I'm like, come on, right? It's like, I don't want to be that way, but it's like, you can't even get it together to have a website. How am I going to let you operate on me or do whatever else you need to do? still doing leeches and bloodletting or something if you don't have no website. For heaven's sake,
It needs to be searchable too. You got to be able to find it.
You better pay that extra nickel to have search engine optimization, Bill. That it's one thing to get your website up, but you want to pay your dude a little bit of money. Search engine they embed in there certain words. So if it says mammography in Watauga, you had your person program your website. That would be a good thing, wouldn't it? Finding health information, again, support groups. So just recognizing this two-way street is a blessing. And what percent of your patients, it's almost universal, is it not, are using social media? I'd say certainly under 40, a lot. I mean, I think if we agree with the premise I had an earlier slide, that public health represents our patients, I'd say almost everybody, except 1, 2, have social media presence, a couple heavy users, everybody else somewhere in the middle. I think that's probably likely. Anybody doing direct care? What are patients doing? Which social media are patients on? Any guess about that? Facebook. Patients on Facebook. Snapchat. Certainly our younger people are going to be on Snapchat, Instagram. Anybody heard any success stories from county health departments? Anybody heard somebody doing something well? Like I said, I do some teen pregnancy work. I really thought this idea of having a competition with teens to recruit other teens to the teen clinic using social media platform was an excellent idea. So they had a contest, hey, do a video to invite people to come to the teen pregnancy clinic, and they had various things posted. But I just thought, that engages kids, it's using media that they know, it's putting the word out. Other success stories, things you've seen or heard health departments doing? All right. So I talked about disease support groups and the I think valuable role. Also, as we think about use of media, who's on Fitbit or anybody in an online community? Weight Watchers has an online thing. You're sitting there looking at a piece of chocolate cake. You can go to Weight Watchers and say, somebody talked me off the ledge. This cake is dragging me in or something. Noom, N-O-O-M, is another online. So just this idea that media helps us maintain health. We've got networks of people, caregiver support groups, and ways that people who are family members. I'm thinking part of the research I did, there's a really interesting ALS website, Family Caregivers of ALS, people living with ALS. And so a very difficult, painful journey, but a particular place. Cancer survivorship. There's a CDC has a cancer survivor website, and so there's a place where people who survive cancer can go. Again, diabetes awareness, use of social media. Again, I'm sort of talking about the valuable ways people living with diabetes, hypertension. I stumbled on one, again, a friend of a friend she put something on the Facebook, and I didn't understand the acronym. It's a support group for people with chronic fatigue, and there's an online community of people that had chronic fatigue. And so, again, just being clear that like AA or Weight Watchers or whatever we go to, that there are vast online networks where people who have this thing I have can talk to me and share. Again, unregulated, maybe without medical, hey, just eat beets and you'll cure cancer, whatever. I mean, who knows what comes up. But I think about the value of the support function. Please.
You were asking about some success stories. We've had a couple of major disasters here in our area in the last year. Tornadoes in Auburn, in the Lee County area, and then the hurricane down on the Gulf Coast. I know social media has been a huge piece of both during the disaster, what was going on, and then immediately after, and then recovery.
Beautiful.
And so,
you bet.
With emergency preparedness, you've seen multiple different sites, those that have been run by different agencies and groups, as well as those that have been run by maybe local or maybe an individual or a small group.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
to get the word out, hey, we're doing something this weekend, or hey, we've got health, these supplies are available, or hey, you can donate supplies, and so.
Yeah. Here's an update on the conditions. I'm from the Midwest, but in a place that's having bad flooding right now. And so we're seeing in real time the water's going down here, the flood level is here. And so to be able to put out via social media the needs status, anybody been, had somebody in a tornado area and you're waiting for the all clear, are they okay down there? And the fact that instead of waiting for the phones to be up, to call, waiting for 3 days for your paper newspaper to be delivered on your phone, you can say, okay, well, people are okay. Facebook has a thing that says I can check in, I'm okay. Anybody ever had that? Your friends are somewhere where there's trouble, people can click, I'm okay, don't worry about me. So absolutely, the idea of using social media around emergency disaster situations. Thank you, Bill. So again, some more examples there. Patients like me. Grief support. Anybody know Caring Bridge? This place is fabulous. Caring Bridge. The idea is you got somebody with a chronic condition or an emergency, and instead of Ron, I'm going to call you, she's fine, and I'm going to call you, she's fine, and I'm going to call you, we got through surgery, I'm going to post on this thing, we're through surgery, it's good, keep praying. Everybody who logs in is going to get that. I had a friend who had a chronic disease several years ago, and we used that for weeks to update people on the status, and so my friend's wife didn't have to call everybody in the world 15 times. We didn't have to do the phone tree anymore. We just said, if you want an update on John's status, there it is, there and fired up. Excellent, excellent. I have no economic investment in that at all, so I'm not plugging anything. It's a free service and really, really does a nice job. Again, how are you going to find communities? You going to Google it. Hello, Charlene, what you going to do? Google it, or either ask your grandchildren, what do I do? Where do I find? I'm going to Google it. Go to the website again, find out. One thing I say is, as we're thinking for ourselves, thinking for consumers, I also think it's really important that we have conversations about reputable digital media sites. And I keep coming back to Mayo Clinic, CDC, other federal government sites. I think Mayo Clinic does an excellent job of consumer research. I think WebMD is one we can rely on. Again, there are lots and lots of others, but trying to have in our pocket, here are some reputable public health, certainly starting with adph.org. ORG or COM? ORG, ADPH.org, but making sure we've got resources. It doesn't mean I'm not going to Google and find my nutty cousin's link to her nutty website, but it does, sorry to call your cousin nutty, that's kind of rude, isn't it? But it still means we as healthcare professionals, here's some websites that we rely on. Again, like most people going to Google. Somebody says, you got a rash, I'm going to go and say, what's that rash, and are they right or aren't they? And what should that rash, and did they give me the right medicine? Again, part of the difficulty practicing medicine. People on their phone in the parking lot after they leave saying, did they or didn't they do the right thing? And I'm going to review you on Yelp saying that dope didn't give me the right medicine. Again, thinking about reliable websites. I talked about that a minute ago. And then ways to make sure your Twitter posts, Facebook, good articles. Again, we can be proactive by saying, here's some articles about vaccination that we think are well written. Here are some reputable things that we said. I mean, you have to disrespect anybody. It means you can say, here's what we're putting forward as a gold standard. Yeah, the answer is yes to that. Everybody's Googled your health condition, have they not? Googled the technology, seen what other options. Seeing is there another BMI chart, Bono? That's what I keep doing, Ron. I keep saying, if I just search hard enough, I'm going to find a BMI chart that I like. But please, if you have one, those of you in the audience, if you have one that is a pleasant BMI chart, please forward it to me, because the ones I'm seeing are so disagreeable. I'm sure they're wrong. The last set of reminders is about our online reputation. I don't want to get bogged down, but again, this idea that people are grading us and whatever else, sort of, we don't have control over that. I mean, obviously, everything we do in public health, we try and use good customer service standards because it's the right thing to do. I just think in this day and age, we also do it because we may get dinged on the back end if we're not. I think the reality is health grades, Yelp, Google, everybody has a chance to talk about their experience of healthcare, talk about how it was. And so we are providing clinical services in an age where there's a kind of transparency we haven't been used to. And I just think, good and bad, I mean, it just is the reality where we practice. And so if I'm running a clinical program in a county health department, I'm going to say, I want you to do the right thing because it's good health care, because it's whatever else. And if I were the assistant director of nursing for the state, I'd say, please, don't get a bad Yelp review. Please don't get us ding-dong Google, whatever else, right? Because the bottom line is we are in an age of transparency where it's not just the right thing to do. It's not just good clinical standards. We do have to think about reputation. And we, you know, most reviews are positive. Again, good news. Most people talk about what went well, and you can encourage people who are pleased. I think the advantage of saying here's a way to review us or inviting people is it counters the potential for dissatisfied customers, but you can't control what people say. And so Dr. Foe, who I talked about earlier, Dr. Kevin M.D., says we can't control, but we can control the content of what we say about ourselves. And I think part of that is trying to encourage positive feedback, trying to take the high road. One thing I know about the review process is I don't think you want to get down in the mud and start fighting with patients publicly. You know, well, if she showed up late and we think she was hungover, you don't want to go get down in the mud and say, she been in trouble all over town. Or you may be tempted. I will say, I might be tempted to say she was hungover and showed up without clean underwear. Do I want to go there? Well, Rhonda, we're going to keep it real today. Ways physicians use social media, obviously. Putting word out about our healthcare practice, connecting with other physicians, keeping up to date, looking at research subjects. These are, again, some real specific physician-driven. If you're thinking about how you want to connect with patients, again, thinking about the best website you can put forward. I'm self-employed, and people say to me, I'm thinking about selling something. First thing I say is you better spend some money on a website, because the difference in your website and somebody who went to Office Depot and made up their own website is going to make a difference between do I go to your store or not. So thinking about that website, Bill, I already gave you the tip, search engine optimization. The reality is, in terms of an internet search, I say Google, but I think it's Bing, wherever else. If people don't show up in the first 20, nobody's going to find it. If I Google you and you ain't on page 1 or 2, you might as well be in the dark ages. So search engine optimization means the person that develops your website figures out little code things that are going to drive me to the top of your search engine. Looking at your Facebook account, making sure Facebook is linked to your website, making sure that particular things you're pushing here, we've got the smoke out and flu shots and other success stories, sharing, physicians sharing other successes with one another. What's the advantage of doing this? Patient satisfaction increases. The interesting finding about when I have a social media presence is people are going to be happier with their services if in fact you are doing this. You're going to have meaningful connection with people, the ability to convey health information back and forth. Again, whose physicians have a patient portal where you can get information back? I ain't waiting for nobody to call me, and I call them back, whatever. Give me my login and let me know that cholesterol number is whatever it should be or whatever it is, right? And so the whole idea, again, those things are protected. I don't think we're there in public health, are we? Can I get my lab results if I'm in a clinical encounter in public health? Again, I just think how we going to keep up? How can we get there? And obviously, again, I just heard 15 lawyers running down the stairwell saying, "Stop that bald guy." I just think that if we're going to compete with the private sector, thinking about patient portal, thinking about how people can get that information. Some more ideas about putting social media into practice. Google Alerts alert you to whether our name comes up or not. Figuring out how much time you got, what the role of people is. I mean, I think what's really apparent, if you talk about the county health department, most folks are not going to have time to do very much. And so as you're developing a strategy, just kind of asking the question, what do we want to do? Bill, we talked about that earlier. Who am I trying to reach, whatever? And what time do we have to invest in this? You know, nobody's full-time job in the county is to do social media accounts. So the best they can do is maybe link to ADPH, make sure that we're keeping our kind, maybe have some other links, but sort of thinking through, do we have time? Who does what? What's our message? What's our core site for our presence? You know, where do we want to? And then the gold standard, and again, we're not doing this in public health, but some people contract out and say somebody is monitoring our reputation. If you're a private physician and really reliant on your reputation, you may consider spending some money. So somebody's searching around, trying to figure out when your name comes up, when a review comes up, making sure. Do we have a social media policy in place? Yes, we do. ADPH, yes. Clearly defined. Last thing, if we look at the future medical students, we think about where we're headed here. This survey just talks about what's happening. So as we think about where we're at now in the delivery of clinical services and where we're headed, there's a snapshot about who's going to be taking care, who's going to be caring for you, Rhonda, when you're in the nursing home. There they are. 86% of them are active on social media. They're going to be on their phone. 95% people caring for you when you're in the nursing home going to have Snapchat or Instagram, probably both. Using Flickr, Facebook. 78% of medical students in the survey had YouTube. They're going to be Skyping you in the nursing home. They're going to be texting you in there. They sure ain't going to be driving down to Baldwin County talking, "Hey, Mom, I just want to see how you feeling." They're going to have you fire up your laptop and say, "How you doing, girl? Lift up your gown. We want to see that rash." I'm sorry to keep it so real, but that looks much better. Keep using that cream. Bye-bye. Again, the reality of where we're headed in terms of healthcare, it is on your screen, y'all. And the reality, you know, good or bad, as I said when I started, good or bad, it's here. You know, you can debate, like I said, you can debate, is email a good thing or not? You know, it's here, you know. Should I cling to my flip phone or not? No, your flip phone. Anybody brave enough to pull your flip phone out today? Guidelines for some more ideas about using social media. Don't interact personally. Again, we've talked about a lot of concerns about HIP, but this is a good summary of what we've talked about. The last bullet is about professionalism. Again, if you're doing this well, it's this fun, interactive, getting information out, conversation with people. That last bullet about professionalism, that ultimately recognizing our ethical code, our professional code of standards, if that's guiding us, we're in great shape. Here's the resources. Somebody's saying, "Oh, that dude was so smart. Rhonda brought a smart guy from Asheville, North Carolina. This is who I was smart enough to steal from." So these resources will be there in the slides. Again, there was some really interesting guidance on the Mayo Clinic website that I used. And again, these slides are available to you. CDC obviously has put forward a lot of information. In summary, we're at that point. Recognizing that what you do online is the way you act anywhere. Professionalism, confidentiality. Mistakes are going to occur. You know, that the bottom line is any human interaction, we're going to make mistakes. We're going to cross a line with our social media. We're going to do something. Hopefully it's not an egregious sort of HIPAA violation, something like that. But to say we've built into our policy and code, here's what we're going to do if we do mess up, because we are going to mess up, and then trying to look at those opportunities to improve when a mistake is made. Again, there's great power in the conversation. I just think as I thought about this, the idea that healthcare is not the old white person in a lab coat with a stethoscope telling me what I got to do, but that healthcare becomes a conversation between engaged equals, concerned about my health, challenging one another, growing. I just think there's a rich opportunity for us if we can say I'm not going to be afraid, and being risk averse, saying I'm not going to learn to tweet, I'm not going to learn that new thing. Unless you're retired, God bless you. For those of us who are still in the game, we're going to have to keep pushing ourselves, I think. That's the reality of the world we live in. And certainly you talk about the next wave of coworkers, you talk about the next wave of patients. They're not wanting us to get better at printing brochures or taping flyers up at the Piggly Wiggly. We're going to have to step up and take chances. So my thanks to the folks at the Alabama Wise Woman Program who sponsored this bill and his extensive network of people in the social work office, the fine folks who run the video conference here, other websites that I stole from, adapted my contact information there at the bottom. Questions about what I've done, anything people would like to ask or add to our conversation?
I have a question.
Sir.
You talked about 5 o'clock, kind of stopping work at 5 o'clock, and you also talked about going to conferences and things, and people putting the phone down, which I've been able to do for the last hour and a half, which is unusual.
Great.
But oftentimes our employers are kind of expecting us to be available, to be on call, to have access and to answer questions as needed. And so even if you're in a conference for, a couple of days, the expectation is, somebody's got to answer those emails. Somebody's got to be watching for those emergency kind of situations. That goes even further to say that a lot of providers are putting phones in their social workers' hands and asking them maybe to work out of the home.
Yeah.
You leave that message, hey, this is, Bill, social worker, please call me when you can.
Yeah.
I'm now at the Piggly Wiggly in the grape jelly aisle, and
Or grape wine.
I get that phone call.
Yeah.
How do you handle that? How do you've been trying to get this person for, for a day or two to get them back in or to follow up with them, and now here I am talking amongst the peanut butter about,
the results of your chlamydia test are back.
or maybe a lead, or some other situation.
Yeah.
So,
a lot of difficult issues, Bill. Thank you. I mean, I think for me, what I go back to is most of us, our contract, our agreement is to give the employer 40 hours a week, and I worry that because of connectivity, we as over-helpers have pushed that, or employers have learned they can over-push that. And I think there's a conversation about what's reasonable. I think a lot of people would say, well, raise your hand in this room, my work-life balance isn't what I wish it was. Anybody? 2, 4, couple nodding and back. It's about half the room that says I don't have the right work-life balance. What I do with that, Bill, is say I want to give you 105%. I want to do the job well. I want to make things accessible, and I think we practice what we preach. What I do is I go back to, are we practicing what we preach? And if I've got stressed out, smoking, overeating, no time to exercise, you so busy taking phone calls at 8 o'clock that you can't get to the YMCA, then I say, what are we as a public health community if I'm working you to death and you can't take a day off or spend Saturday with your family? My friend says, it is 5 o'clock, Mom's going to be with her children. And so I think there's a tension. I do want people to have things be accessible. I'm not saying we shut everything off at 5 o'clock, but if I'm going to be on emergency response, if you got me on my phone doing stuff, calls, driving to Baldwin County to save sheep in the flood, then I'm going to get some credit time for that. Then you're going to acknowledge that, and we're going to go back to my agreement of 40 hours a week. Where I go with that, the argument to leadership, Bill, because I know where we're going, the argument to leadership is that's about staff retention. That's about customer service. That's about economics. Because I'm a leader in any system, I'm going to work people until they drop and then step over their body and see who else I can work to death. But if I'm trying to make that case, I say, if I were the assistant director of nursing, I say, I've got to work on staff retention. I want to keep these nurses because the economic cost of training a nurse who leaves us to go to hospital because we're working her death is enormous. So staff retention, economics, and customer service, and the economics of happy customers. So again, I just think what I think is we look at our tendency to overwork. We look at, are we practicing in public health what we're preaching about work-life balance, about healthy habits, about managing our emotional well-being. And again, I go back, if I'm going to leadership with that argument, you got to think through an economic argument. I go back to customer service when people are rested and have a work-life balance. And I go back to staff who are happy, more likely to stay, and I don't have people leaving my workforce and having to retrain another workforce and all that happens if I'm not mindful of staff retention issues. Thank you. Other questions? Last thanks to those of you on the video. I know it's not the best to have to see somebody only on video, so thanks for making time. Thanks to you here. I know you weren't expecting I was going to say, what do you think? What do you think? But I really appreciated that we had a bit of a conversation here. So with that, thanks to everybody there. Thanks again to the video folks. We are DONE. What happens?
This concludes our program for today. I want to thank Jim for being here and thank you for watching. As Jim mentioned, you can please remember that you can refer back to the training and resources anytime on demand, and have a great day.